Welcome to Coffee with Stripes. I'm your host, Mike. My guest today is Seattle author Dex Quire. How are you doing, Dex?
Great, Mike. Thanks for having me. We now find ourselves in San Francisco in early summer in June, mid-June of 1967, the Summer of Love, which made Time magazine that very month. And the Monterey Festival was coming up, and we had landed early in the week on Monday.
Who is we?
Okay, we would be myself, my older sister, and my younger brother, and my parents. We were launching off from Everett, Washington, where I was born and raised. And my dad was working for a phone company that had a convention down in San Francisco. So being the frugal man that he was, he said, "We're having a family vacation. And while I'm sitting in boardrooms in San Francisco, you guys can be in the swimming pool wherever we're going to stay."
Not really realizing it was a happening down there at the time.
We kind of knew things were boiling, and you were getting a lot of news reports. The Haight-Ashbury scene was in full steam. Scott McKenzie's "Are You Going to San Francisco" was on the radio. In fact, I remember as we were tossing our bags in the Rambler station wagon, my sister put a flower in her hair when she heard Scott McKenzie's hit song come on KJR. You had to listen to KJR. So it definitely was happening down there, and we drove. It took us, I think, a night and a half. We ended up driving to downtown San Francisco. We got there in the afternoon. We checked into the underground parking garage, and my dad looked at the ticket taker and said, "Do you guys have a swimming pool?" And he shook his head no, and he immediately turned around and left the underground parking lodge and headed for Fisherman's Wharf, where there was a funky old travel lodge motel. The one with the little bear. Do they still have those? The Travel Lodge
I've seen
motels?
the bear around.
The little bear mascot.
Yeah.
And right on Fisherman's Wharf, right in the heart of the kind of touristy waterfront area. And as we were heading into their underground parking, we looked over and we saw a little sedan with three big afros inside of it. And we all thought, "Oh, look at those guys." And we pointed at them and kind of waved, and they waved and pointed back at us. And that was Jimi and Noel Redding and who's our other fellow?
Mitch
Mitchell, along with, who knows, one of their handlers or managers. And they were checking in.
Chaz.
Yeah, possibly Chaz. They're right behind us, as we all figured our way through the parking and getting checked in. And it turns out they were also located on the second floor, I believe. I remember a bright red carpet. And the reason I know that is because we would see them walking up and down the hallway. And this leads to the heart of the story.
Now, at the time, did you know who they were?
We did not know who they were. We just thought they were some really cool guys with cool hair. And my sister was a couple years older than me. I think that she had a feeling. She said, "These guys are famous. They're something. They're in a group. They're musicians. There's something going on with them." I just have that feeling. So she would have been maybe 14 or so. She had sort of had her adolescent kind of fan vibes going.
The star radar was going
The
off.
star radar was there, yeah. So to get to the heart of the encounter, actual meeting Jimi, my sister and I were bored kids in a motel We'd probably swum all morning, and we'd seen this very. He looked tall to us. I don't know if Jimmy was really tall, but his afro made him very tall, and we'd smiled at him and kind of nodded at him as he was walking past us in the hallway. But this time, we saw him coming towards us, and instead of letting him go past, my sister stopped him and said, "Hey, can you do us a favor?" And he stopped and nodded and kind of looked and said, "Okay, what's up?" And she said, "Well, we found that if you stick your hand up into the pop machine." The pop machine. This is one of those details that detective novels use to make the reader think that it's a true story. So the detail has to be expressed. And the detail is this was a pop machine selling those small Coke bottles that they used to sell. I think it would be an 8-ounce maybe. The real tiny little Coke bottles made of glass.
Something you're most likely to see in a hotel where they're not going to be dishing out the full.
Right. And there it was in the hallway. It was right outside our room. And we did indeed find out that if you rattled it around, if you got your hands on the bottle, you could pull it down and get a Coke for free. So what else do 12 and 14-year-olds think about but free Cokes? So there we were. And there's Jimi Hendrix with his hand up inside a loose Coke machine. Sure enough, his big hand is up there rattling around, and he pulls it down and pulls out a free dripping Coke and hands it to my sister. And we were all happy and smiling. And of course, my sister, being a little bit, how shall we say, unshy, said, "Well, are you guys a group?" "Yes." "Oh, I don't remember if we even asked his name. We were a little bit knocked out by him, but you could tell that he had a very warm atmosphere." And I think the conversation traded a few innocent sentences like, "Where are you from?" and Seattle, and "Oh, we're from Everett." "Oh, we're neighbors," and da 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 da.
Oh yeah.
And "Thank you again," and I think he said, "I'll remember that machine." And I think afterwards we went ahead and rattled a few of our own because it was easy to get up into the machine. And I think my sister stopped Jimmy just to have the opportunity to say hello and find out what was going on with these guys.
Yeah. I was gaining some information.
Yeah, and there's a further twist in which if Mitch or Noel were alive, they would be able to corroborate this. I'm sorry I didn't get this on earlier, but my younger brother, who would have been around 9 at the time, was very mischievous. And Mitch and Noel hung out in the pool with some very attractive young ladies in bikinis. I do remember that. And my brother was very much of a, what would you say, an irritant to the young guys as they're hanging out with their girls, as in splashing them and generally just being an imp and harassing them in the pool. I remember when Mitch dove in, his curly locks smoothed down in the pool, and my brother said, "Hey, did you give yourself a permanent?" And then Mitch tried to splash him away like a gnat that he was. I think he also swept some of Mitch's jewelry into the deep end of the pool as it was laying in the sun there. Stuff, a very typical introduction to upstanding American kids. Brats for these young Englishmen.
There's no horseplay in the pool area.
Exactly. So,
and the pool is what it all came down to. This serendipity of the hotel you were booked in not having the pool.
Exactly.
That's why your dad just took off and said, "Hey, if these kids are going to be hanging around
exactly.
hotel, they're going to need a pool.
There's no vacation without a pool. Forget it. And the travel lodge fit the bill perfectly. A nice little bean pod shaped pool, and there we were, and it was great. We had a great San Francisco summer. We wandered up and down the wharf. We took a couple-mile walk to Ghirardelli Square. We even toured Haight-Ashbury, like all the square bourgeois families driving through and pointing at all the hippies. And my mom is an artist, so she has had and has a certain affinity with anything daring or new. And we bought a very beautiful poster. I think it was advertising Quicksilver Messenger Service. With the quality of the poster making back then was astonishing. The whole was a large wall-sized poster with a beautiful colored foil strips, and I'm sure it would be worth a lot of money today. But it kind of ended up in our basement, getting tossed around by the years and decades, and whatever happens to posters when you don't care about them that much. But at the time, we were really thrilled just to see the whole scene and to be somewhere that Time magazine was reporting on.
Was it kind of like what you'd have in mind, where you can just point everywhere and there's just dozens of hippies laying around, or did you have to pick out like
no.
It
It was very crowded. It was and so you had the spectacle of just kids being kids, basically hanging out like a very crowded day, say on Capitol Hill block party or something. Just the sidewalks are crowded, streets are crowded, and then you have a row of cars with mom and dad and maybe grandma in the back seat and the kids, and they're all kind of wide-eyed and looking around and maybe pointing. Don't point.
You don't want them to notice you.
You don't want them to notice you.
Yeah, they're the wildlife. We're just the safari expedition,
right? Exactly. Yeah. But the enterprising among the hippies knew that this was also an opportunity to make money. So I think there must have been T-shirt salesmen around, and as I say, the poster salesman was right on the money. My mom spotted him, and boom, $1, I think it was. He knew what to sell, and anyway, a little piece of memory that I wanted to record for the ages. And the capstone to the whole story, of course, is that the Jimi Hendrix Experience was in town to play for the Monterey Pop Festival that took place that weekend, the weekend of the week that we arrived. And that was the great Saturday night where Jimi performed for all the stars. Paul McCartney was there, and Jefferson Airplane, Joan Baez, all the old 60s names. I'm not sure if Dylan was there. He should have been there if he wasn't. He might have been in New York. But there was Jimi and playing and burning his guitar, lighting his guitar on fire.
The famous lighter fluid.
The lighter fluid on the Stratocaster. Yeah, that was the night. And after that, they just took off for the stars, and the rest is recorded history. But thanks for this opportunity to put in our 2 cents of we knew him when.
And then later on, you recognized him from the TV that's the guy we met at the swimming pool. That's the guy.
Yeah, of course. After that, he was a sensation. He became a media item. So, the music magazines all had articles on him, and the daily papers took up his story and the group story. But I will say that another item about being around San Francisco at the time was there were a number of hippie newspapers and alternate papers, something like The Stranger, The Stranger is now an established paper, but at one time it was kind of an underground rag, and there were lots of those. San Francisco was the hub of anything alternative and underground. So we picked one up, And this is still during the week, later on in the week, and we were flipping through it, looking at all the funny, the cool cartoons and the hippie art and everything. And we did see a little square with the outline of the 3 afro heads, and just a little announcement saying the Jimi Hendrix Experience is here, fresh from England, and they will be playing at the Monterey Pop Festival, and be there. And I think it advertised the location and price and all that.
And you just happened to meet him the day before he changed guitar history.
A couple days, before,
No one could really ever look at the guitar again the same way. In fact, you almost have to be a little mad at him for setting that thing on fire. How can you top that?
Well, he had an inner sense of topping this or that, because he came out of the we call it the Chitlin circuit, which was every city of any size in every state had a club where mostly black people would go and have fun and hear good music and drink and whatever and dance, and the sense is the Chitlin, because the kitchen might have greens or some kind of soul food on order, but they also served as a kind of second tier entertainment venue, because American life, not for better but for worse, was more segregated. The 60s was coming out of that very dark time in our history, and even the entertainment industry was quite segregated, and yet there was so much talent in the black community. I mean, B.B. King was probably one of the performers who would straddle that circuit. He would, in certain cities, he would play at a downtown arena or whatever, and then the next night he might be down at the club in the Chitlin circuit,
and they were notoriously just more outlandish in the performance. It wasn't just the band. You had Buddy Guy swinging from the rafters by his knees upside down.
And Jimi talked about that. He said, if you're going to play for black folks, you got to be good, and you got to make everybody happy, and you got to entertain them, So if you can play and do somersaults and play behind your back and swing the guitar around and play with your teeth, so much the better. All that stuff was really old hat to him. And so when he arrived in England and pulled out all those tricks, he just, you could wipe the floor with everybody. They just were absolutely knocked out. The English ideal of a wonderful blues player is Eric Clapton standing there, parking his hand in the 6th position and
eyes
wailing
closed,
away and
feet planted
and doing a great job. But here comes Jimi, like a comet, and
Well, do you remember what time of the summer that was? Would that be almost 50 years ago to this weekend?
Oh, wow, you're right. They were in
2017.
Oh, my gosh.
67.
So, yes, we're talking 50 years ago, and it would have been in the middle week or the 3rd week of June. I suppose if we were right on it, we could go Google the date of the Monterey Pop Festival. Yeah. But it would just, basically, it was the week before the weekend of the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967.
Well, in honor of the Summer of Love, thanks so much for telling that story, Dex.
Right on, Mike. Summer of Love. Peace.
50 years ago. Hopefully 50 years from now, there will still be Summers of Love.
Right on. Hey, hey.
This has been Coffee with Stripes. We'll see you next time.
Bye.